Hello everybody, I am Phoenix Perry. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then talk about where I see the maker movement having been and then where it's going to go. So I own a small game studio called Dozen Eyes Games, and we make museum installations and applied games. We made a game with the U.S. State Department last year to help political refugees adjust to life in the United States. We also make mobile games. We're about to launch a giant exhibition at the New York Historical Society called Silicon City. And we did all the interactives of that, so we got to remake the vintage Tennis for Two, which was very fun, and do lots of great things. I also make these giant constructions. This is believe it or not, this is a synthesizer, and each one of those panels is actually able to play notes, so people can play notes and write music together. I'm really into creating collaborative performance environments. So, okay, well, I don't have the audio on, but this is a fun synthesizer that as people shine more flashlights onto this sculpture, the notes that they play and the rhythms change and go up higher in pitch. It's very fun. And then I run an organization called the Code Liberation Foundation, which I founded, that teaches women to program games for free. We've taught roughly 2,000 people in New York City across a range of ages, everything from 16 to 60. And we've had a really great run of the last 3 years. Here are some of our events. This is at my, my Hack Lab alma mater, NYC Resistor, which some of you may know. This is a thing that I did. It was a workshop for one-button games where I taught everybody how to make a game with one button, which was really fun. We did a game jam around Nicki Minaj, which I actually happen to be a fan of. She did this great video where she talked about when she took charge in a photo shoot, she was called a bitch, but if Lil Wayne did it, he was called a boss. And she goes, I'm going to boss up. I'm done with this. And it's a great video. And we did this game jam around empowerment. We have also run 2 years of high school classes for kids between 16 and 18 at the Magnet Science School in Brooklyn, New York. We have a lot of lady jams, which are game jams just for girls. We work with an organization called Black Girls Code, both in New York and in San Francisco and in Atlanta and a lot of other places around the United States to reach the African American population of girls between 9 and 15 to encourage them to go into programming and game development. We have game development classes. Some of the games that have come out of our community have been Nina Freeman's How Do You Do It, which is a game about having sex, or thinking about having sex if you're a little girl and trying to understand it. And The 5 Stages, which was a game about a breakup. Slam City Oracles, which is pretty much, you know, the rebel yell call of video games. You get to have a lot of fun and bounce around in this world with your best friend. And a mobile game that if you want to download it, it's free. It's called Stellar Smooch, and I'm a huge fan of it. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the maker movement and how I think it started, the kinds of tensions that play out in it, and sort of where it's going and the things we really need to be aware of, concerned about, and considering as makers who are starting and working with and, you know, contributing to hacker and maker spaces. So there was a soul with a great dream. So basically, I feel like Nikola Tesla was in many ways the kind of seed roots of a lot of the energy and the vibe and the impetus behind the open source hardware and open source software communities. He really insisted that he believed that power should be available and free for all. He wanted his inventions to be shared widely. And basically, there was one group with a lot of greed. So we still have this tension at play in our community today. You have Nikola Tesla saying energy should be free and that we should invent this way that humanity can all have access to these wonderful, wonderful tools, right? Which you should be hearing a lot of right now in the Make community, that we should be making accessible or hacking accessible. And then you have like the barons, particularly in this specific case, you have JP Morgan, who is his funder, who once he realized he could charge for Tesla's inventions, promptly stuck a meter on them and then began to discredit him. And this is this kind of root in this fundamental drive to improve life versus this fundamental drive to profit from life. And personally, I really love this idea as technology is a limitless resource that should be free and available to all of us. So today, at odds with each other are these same forces, and one is exceptionally good at co-opting, corrupting, and shutting the other one down. So even though we lost the battle in terms of free power, there's never stopped being a resistance to that, right? So if you guys remember in the 90s, I mean, I hope everyone here has hacked a Speak and Spell. If you haven't, you should put that on your to-do list. It is very, very fun. And there's been this long history of people taking these projects or products and sort of inverting them for their own purposes, or publishing their code for free, or publishing their hardware open source, right? So basically, then came what I believe started in the 80s, and this is the greatest hacker group, I think, possibly, maybe in the world, but definitely in Europe. And this is the Chaos Computer Club, which has a huge interest in making hardware and wireless communications and security a kind of priority for technology. And every year they have a conference, which if you've never gone to it, you absolutely should. It's probably one of the best conferences outside the Open Hardware Summit, in my opinion, in the fields we're in. And I think it's very important to think that this is kind of still happening, right? And if you're alive right now, the state of kind of tech education should really interest you. It should be something you should pay a lot of attention to, because within it there is this separation from science, technology, engineering, and math, and the technician. So we're kind of creating two classes of people, right? We're creating the first class, which are the folks that we see as kind of STEM and folks who deserve to go make $100,000+ a year, and these people who actually make these things, which is really interesting to me. And then you kind of have this revolution. So the maker movement comes about, and it's this beautiful idea that starts as this seed community. It grows out of the Bay Area, and it grows out of New York, and you have these people really interested in bringing the means of production back to the everyday man. That was the idea, that was the goal, that was the dream, right? I think it's time for us to maybe look and see where we're at with the dream and how far we got, right? Because this is what Foxconn looks like inside. And these are the people that are actually making the things that let us do these things. Meanwhile, this is what we celebrate as maker culture, right? This is a kid in the US made a potato gun, won an award at Maker Faire, gets to go to the White House. How are those things somehow equal, or somehow one is being valued so much more than the other, right? So Meg had this idea that humans make things and we should celebrate that. And from this moment on, for a few seconds, I'm going to talk about a talk that I thought was really, I'm sorry, my phone's still on, I tried to turn it off, that are really pivotal, that was something that was really pivotal when I saw it. I've been thinking a lot about diversity, and it was why I started Code Liberation Foundation, because I wanted code to get to a wider audience. And I saw Leigh Boka, I'm going to say her last name weird and wrong, and it's because we've never met in person. Leigh Boka, if anyone knows how to say it, please see me after this, but she invented the lily pad. And she's amazing. She was in MIT Media Lab for years. How does she say it? Buckley? Oh, yes, I now know. But she did a talk at I/O in 2014 that resonated with me hugely. And if you've never seen it, please look it up and please watch it. Because she talks about what Make became and what the maker movement is and how it got to this point that feels a little bit out of control. And she shows a couple covers of Make and talks about the kinds of things that Make supports and promotes, right? But then we have these alarming statistics that over 9 years and 39 covers and 41 people, 85% were men and boys, 15% were women and girls, but 0% were people of color. And that is really problematic. And the median income of most of these people is $100,000 a year plus. And that's more than 82% of Americans. In fact, that's more than 96% of most Americans. right? So this is what making could actually include. We could include these things into our narrative. And I feel that the moment when we watched Ahmed Muhammad get arrested for making a clock was a moment where this really struck, right? Because if he'd have been a white kid, it would have been like, oh, you get a blue ribbon, go meet Obama. You're a brown kid, you're clearly a terrorist, we need to put you in jail, right? And it sounds reductiveness, but that's the actual truth of what actually happened there. And it was a moment where I think that maker culture had a kind of a chance to move around this kid. I thought it was really a nice moment. You know, and you've got like Grandmaster Flash, like hacking turntables to invent hip hop. And you have amazing, like, crazy modified cars, and you know, electronic music is full of women who reinvented how to make music. And this is something that I really want to kind of bring into the conversation, that programming and making, it's a political act, and the kinds of things that we're laying down right now, we're at the naissance, the very beginning of the birth of technology, right? Imagine, this stuff's going to be the material of life for thousands of years going forward. We're never going to not have it again. And right now, the things we put in place and the kind of paradigms we introduce and the thought structures that we create are going to change the future. So teaching women and people of color to program and hack is meaningless on its own. It gets us nowhere unless we're going to invent new structures surrounding them in our culture. So this is what employment in the computer systems and design-related service industries in the thousands looks like from the 90 to 2000, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And as you can see, this is only going to continue to go up. This is going nowhere but vertical. This is a number of women who entered into computing occupations, right? Same time frame. And for me, technology is too powerful of an economic reality to exclude women, queer people, and people of color. And I think we need to kind of think about where we're at, the tools we're creating, our practices, and our spaces, and how do we bring the technicians or the people that have kind of been ostracized from this very, let's just be really honest, white male maker hacker culture back into our communities? How do we integrate and build relationships and really not create this other paradigm, which I think is a little bit dangerous? So with that said, I'm going to introduce Janet. So